Contact at Grid Zero, the watch officer's voice snapped in the command hall, cutting across the low mechanical whir of data processors. A single red indicator flared to life on the heads-up display above Earth's southern hemisphere, pulsing in time with a data feed that showed the Yulkin survey ship drifting into Earth's orbit. Garrick Dorn leaned forward in his seat, his jaw tightening as he read the data stream overlaid on the screen. The council chamber felt like a pressurized cell. Every breath of air heavy with the knowledge that this scan was no accident. The council chamber was buried deep beneath the polar crust, steel floors cold under boots, the faint vibration of automated data racks vibrating in the distance. Around the central table, the faces of the council members were half-lit by the laser plasma displays that mapped every detail of the Yulkon craft's trajectory. Each man spoke in clipped phrases, no wasted words. "They're running a covert probe. Secondary scans confirm," murmured Advisor Torvek, his fingertips grazing the console to shift data feeds. "That's an unauthorized pass, and it's beneath our orbital defense line. They're testing our response. No illusions about that." Doran's eyes narrowed. "Or they're taking something. That's the only reason they'd break protocol so openly. There's no diplomatic cover for this maneuver." A new feed lit up. A small shuttle detached from the Yukon vessel, its silhouette cutting against Earth's upper atmosphere. The room went still, only the quiet clack of Dorn's boots as he stepped closer to the display. His knuckles whitened as he focused on the shuttle's course vector. The feed resolved. Payload size consistent with human cargo. The council chamber's recycled air tasted metallic on the tongue. "Payload confirmed," Torvek said softly. "It's a child. They took a child from New Conclave settlement." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of the words pressed into every corner of the room. Dorn's fingers curled against the edge of the table, his voice low and steady. "They know our codes of engagement. This is a message of their own, disguised as a test." The child's image flickered briefly on the corner of the heads-up display. A small figure bundled into a thermal cocoon, eyes squeezed shut against the cold. A sudden heat flared in Dorn's chest, and he forced it down into a calm mask. He had no patience for emotional spillage. Not here. Counselor Vainrin looked up from the table, his expression stripped of the usual diplomatic calm. "Garrick, we're authorizing full operational control to you. This isn't an act of war, yet, but we won't let them use our children as leverage. Not now, not ever." Dorn nodded once. Understood. He turned to the laser plasma display that showed the Yukon's mining territories. The data columns flickered with every adjustment of his finger on the console, names of outer colonies and orbital nodes scrolling past like a ledger of targets. "I'll take the Avaxis. She's already fitted with transponder emulation. We'll track them past Lascari's outer corridor. No alarms, no direct engagement until extraction." Torvek stepped closer, voice steady but carrying the dry crackle of threat. "If they notice you, if they realize what you're doing, they'll respond with force. We can't trigger open war." "That's why I won't let them see me," Dorn replied. He felt the cold weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, but it steadied him. Every breath was measured now, every word a deliberate strike. He studied the data, each metric a puzzle piece in the silent war he would fight without ever firing a shot. At least, not in the open. The room was lit only by the cold blue of the data feeds, casting long shadows across the steel walls. The council's last words fell away, leaving only the steady churn of orbital updates on the command decks. Dorn felt the air in the room shift. An electric tension, nothing poetic about it. He drew in a deep breath that tasted of recycled oxygen and the coppery tang of Earth's subterranean command center. He spoke quietly, not for the council but for himself. "They took a human child. We'll show them that even a single child is not a low-value target." The words were ice-edged, spoken with finality, and they landed on the room like a weighted bar. Outside the command center, the corridors of Earth's polar installation were lit in a cold glow, automated transport shuttles gliding through the darkness without a sound. Dorn moved through the hall in measured strides, the echo of his boots lost in the muffled architecture of reinforced concrete. His mind was already mapping the infiltration, the Avexis vector, the Yokon's patrol shift rotations, every sensor blind spot that Earth's deep space arrays could exploit. He paused at the observation beck, the glass wall looking out at Earth's orbit where the first glint of Yolkin's mining fleet drifted like ghosts against the cold horizon. The data overlays traced them in real time, alien symbols flickering in and out of the tracking feeds. In that brief moment, Dorn let the world outside the data screens exist in silence. No comforting words, no hopeful illusions, just the clear knowledge that the Yukon's decision had consequences that would never be undone. He turned from the window and walked back to the briefing room, where two operatives stood waiting. Lorik, the relay operator, his face hard and focused, and Merrick, the infiltration pilot, his eyes flickering over the mission data with clinical disinterest. There were no greetings, no forced camaraderie, only the mission. "Your insertion window is 8 hours, Lorik said, his voice stripped of any trace of doubt. "We'll mask the Avexis trajectory with data relay interference. Yokon will see a ghost ship if they look." Eric's hands moved over a small console, flicking through vector adjustments. "The Avexis can sustain full cloak only for 3 hours. After that, we're relying on deception, not stealth." 3 hours is more than enough, Dorn said. "I'm not planning to linger in their shadow." He looked between them, seeing not men but weapons sharpened for a single purpose. "We recover the child. Then we show them what Earth considers sacrosanct." He stepped away to his private ready room, the low light casting his shadow against the reinforced door. In that silence, he let himself feel the weight of the child's image. A small life, abducted and catalogued by aliens who believed they could dissect humanity's children like lab specimens. The image burned itself behind his eyes, a stark brand that steadied his breath and tightened his resolve. Garrick Dorn checked the Avexis mission codes one last time, fingers flicking across the console in rapid commands. His voice was a whisper now, meant only for the room and the cold steel around him. "This ends with a message they won't mistake. One child, one reckoning." As he moved back toward the launch bay, the final preparations were already underway. Earth's silent corridors watched him pass, each footstep measured and silent, every decision feeding into the next. There was no room for second guesses. There was only the path that Earth's council had sanctioned, the path he would walk without hesitation or remorse. In the final seconds before departure, Garrick Dorn let his eyes linger on the heads-up display once more. The Yelkon's mining territory stretched out across the projection. No poetry, no illusions, just targets marked by data and consequence. He felt the low hum of launch clamps engage, a vibration through the soles of his boots that spoke of the power at his disposal, and in that final breath he closed his mind to everything but the mission, to recover the child and to send a message in the only language the Yulkin would respect: wreckage. He stepped aboard the Avexis as the hatch sealed shut behind him, leaving the world of council chambers and political caution behind. Ahead lay only cold resolve, tactical subterfuge, and the silent promise that no alien hand would ever again take a human child without retribution. The hatch of the Avexis locked with a hollow clang, the muted echo reverberating through the small launch chamber. Garrick Dorn stood at the central console, fingers tracing the infiltration manifest that glowed in sharp green lines on the mission screens. The room was quiet, filled only with the measured breath of the operatives gathered around him. Each of them held a position of silent readiness, their eyes fixed on the shifting data grids that mapped out the Yukon's patrol corridors and transport relay nodes. Counselor Veyron's voice crackled through the comlink, the cold weight of command in each syllable. "Garrick, the Council has reviewed both operational paths. Direct assault would bring the Yulkon's high command into the conflict within hours. Our intention is containment, not escalation." Dorn's jaw tightened. "I understand. Direct assault is off the table. Covert infiltration is our only option. No show of force, no overt signature." He shifted his focus to the console, his voice low and deliberate. "We shape the narrative with information, not with noise. We move like a shadow and leave them grasping at echoes." The infiltration team stood in a semicircle around the command console, the laser-sharp outlines of their mission modules etched into the air. Lorik, the data specialist, spoke first, his words clipped and direct. The Yukon relay net covers every inch of the Lascari corridor. We'll need to piggyback our missions on their patrol signals. I'll ghost our signal profile to match their fleet's routine patrol scans. Marek adjusted the mission vector in the console, his voice calm as he spoke. The Avex's hull design can mimic their patrol ships down to the last thermal bloom. It's the transponder codes that will decide if we get flagged or not. He lifted his eyes to meet Dorn's. You're asking for total deception, Commander. Any break in the pattern, any deviation in the emission signature, and they'll lock on. That's why we won't give them a deviation, Dorn said, his voice like steel against the air. He turned to the mission schematic, eyes narrowing as he traced the infiltration window across the Lascari moon's orbit. We'll drift in with the shadow of their patrol net, slotting ourselves into the Yukon's own blind spot. Their scans will see a friendly ship, nothing more. The room smelled of ionized metal from the maintenance work that had been done on the Avexis only hours before, sharp on the tongue. The air was cold, recycled through the filtration vents of the deep polar complex. Dorn's fingers drummed once against the console, a silent beat that snapped the operative's focus tighter. We're not leaving any margin for discovery. I want every relay drone in the outer corridor mapped and every Yukon ship emission profile logged to the last decimal. Lorik's eyes flickered as he toggled through data streams. I've already begun logging the Yukon patrol frequencies. Their patrols rotate on a predictable cycle. Every 12 hours, a new scan vector. We slip into their orbit during the low rotation window. No alarms. Marek's fingers danced across the interface, adjusting the Avex's cloaking profile. The ship's internal EM cloaking system will cover our approach vector. It's stable for 3 hours, long enough to dock and extract the child, but not long enough to leave heirs in their data archives. Dorn nodded. 3 hours is more than I need. We're not going in to test their vigilance. We're going in to end this quietly. His voice carried a calm finality that cut through the room's cold air like a blade. I'll take the lead on the infiltration. You two maintain relay control and provide data obfuscation from the Avexis console. No improvisation, no deviations. Marek's jaw tightened. Understood. We're ghosts, Commander, not warriors. The infiltration ship loomed in the adjacent hangar, matte black hull drinking in the light from the overhead panels. Her edges were sharp and clean, built for deception, not combat. Garrick Dorn walked slowly around her, eyes tracing the heat dispersion slats built along her ventral ridges, and the soft glow of internal stabilization nodes beneath her hull plates. Every piece of her was tuned to a single purpose, slipping past the Yukon's gaze without stirring the smallest ripple. He stopped by the main hatch, resting his hand against the ship's cold exterior. This vessel is our blade in the dark, he said quietly. The Yukon think Earth is slow to anger. They think this was a test. They're about to learn that Earth has no patience for tests that target our children. Marek's voice was a steady murmur as he began the final systems check. Stealth systems green, cloak integrity holding at 97%. Transponder array aligned to Yukon Border Patrol Code 17, Alga. Lorik? Confirm data feed, stability. Lorik's eyes flickered as he worked the relay console, each movement precise, his voice clipped and focused. Data ghosting stable. I've set up 3 fallback feeds. If the Yukon's command net tries to cross-section our transponder, they'll see routine scans from their own archives. Dorn's eyes narrowed. They won't see the child's location. They'll see only the mask we place in front of them. The air in the launch chamber felt colder now, each breath a reminder of the depth and weight of the mission. Dorn pulled the infiltration harness tight across his chest, the snap of the buckles loud in the silent room. Once we dock, there will be no time for hesitation, he said, his voice measured and calm. The child is the mission's only target. We move in and out without stirring the smallest ripple in their data net. He turned to Marek. Show me the infiltration scenario, full simulation. Merrick keyed the console and the mission schematic flared to life, a three-dimensional map of the Yulkan transport corridor and the Lascari moon's orbital approach. Dorn studied the projection, eyes tracing every vector line, every potential threat angle. "Their patrol routes here, here, and here," Merrick said, his fingers moving in swift, exact motions across the data lines. "We'll approach on a direct vector that shadows their border patrol. No radiation surge, no spike in heat signature." Lorik added, "We'll run false data injections on the Yulkan side. Their scans will see patrol logs from 3 hours prior, not real-time updates." Dorn's breath came slow and steady. "And the fallback plan if they detect the Avexis?" Merrick's voice was firm, each word steady. "The fallback is total data burn. If they detect us, we trigger a cascading data collapse in their relay nodes. They'll lose more than a single target. They'll lose control of half their outer fleet data for days." Dorn's expression didn't shift, but his eyes darkened with the weight of that reality. "Then they'll understand the price of taking a child from Earth. Let's be certain it doesn't come to that." He paused, turning from the console to face the team. "This isn't vengeance. This is controlled dominance. We don't shout. We don't announce. We erase their mistake from the record with finality." The air in the chamber was filled with the quiet tension of men who understood the stakes and the certainty of their task. Dorn gave a final nod. "We launch in 1 hour. Check every system twice. Every detail matters." As the men moved to their stations, the muted tap of boots on the cold deck carried a rhythm of calm violence, the steady beat of a mission that allowed no room for missteps. Dorn stood alone at the edge of the launch bay, his mind already beyond the walls of the chamber, beyond the quiet hume of Earth's subterranean command. He saw the Yulkan ships drifting like predators in orbit, their intentions veiled in alien arrogance. He saw the child, alone in an alien cell, and he saw Earth's answer. The Avexis, a shadow ship born of Earth's refusal to be ignored. Dorn's lips tightened, and he spoke to no one. "We take back what they stole. Then we end the conversation in wreckage." And with those final words, he stepped forward, the weight of Earth's silent promise following him into the dark. The launch clamps released with a hollow thud, the Avexis sliding out of the hangar's cold embrace and into the black above Earth. Garrick Dorn watched the view from the cockpit canopy, planetary lights fading behind them, only the muted glow of distant stars to mark the passage of their silent departure. He could feel the low shift in gravity as the inertial dampeners settled. His hand steady on the console, Merrick's voice cut across the darkness, quiet and deliberate. "Trajectory aligned with Yulkan patrol corridor. Emission profile clean. We're in their shadow now." Dorn didn't look away from the external camera feeds. Each relay drone was a flicker of motion against the black, their white hulls gliding ahead of the Avexis in perfect formation. Lorik's console glowed with data, fingertips moving across the input keys as he shaped their digital ghost in real time. "Relay Drone 3 is your buffer. If the Yukon pulse scan picks up any thermal discrepancy, we can patch it with a false echo. I'll keep the data stream fluid, no gaps for them to catch a break." Merrick's breath was steady, his tone unflinching. "They're running a thermal pass every 30 seconds. We've synced to their cold side. If we keep our reactor line stable, we'll stay buried in the corridor's blind edge." The Avexis glided along that edge like a predator masked by shadows. Every adjustment of the flight control panel an extension of Dorn's will. He spoke with a quiet calm that carried the weight of unbroken focus. "Hold that line, Merrick. The Yukon's pattern is predictable, but we're not here to test theories. One fluctuation, and they'll have our vector." He leaned forward, eyes narrowed as the relay drones shifted ahead of them. Each one was smaller than a combat shuttle, their sleek forms built to vanish against the black. Lorik's knuckles whitened as he keyed through the data pulses, voice clipped. "Yulkna patrols have rerouted twice in the last 5 minutes. Their ships are adjusting for the Lascari moon's gravity well. That's our chance." Their attention is split. Dorn shifted his focus to the internal data feed, fingers brushing the edges of the console to draw up the captured Yelcon transmissions. The alien language was fractured into hard syllables, a rhythmic staccato of commands that held no warmth. "They're discussing transport cargo transfers," Dorn murmured. Keywords align with biological samples. They're moving the child to the outer holding facility above the Lascari moon. Merrick adjusted the flight vector with a calm precision that spoke of hours spent in simulators and real combat alike. Vector recalibrated. We're moving to a parallel track. We'll stay in their radar null zone, not even a flicker on their screens. The AVEX is tilted in the dark, each relay drone shifting in concert, their hulls absorbing the starfield without reflection. Dorn's breath tightened in his throat, the taste of recycled air sharp on the back of his tongue. Lorix's eyes flickered between data feeds, the words from the Yokan's patrol net rattling off in short, clipped bursts. They're starting to rotate patrol frequencies. They're diligent but not adaptive. They're stuck in a cycle they think we can't crack. Dorn spoke in a low voice that felt like steel laid against the bone. They think this corridor is their safe zone. That's why they're using it to move a human child. They won't see the Avexis until it's too late. The words settled into the air of the cockpit, final and absolute. Outside the cockpit, the relay drones flickered in and out of the forward camera feeds, each one casting a thin silver glow across the nose of the Avexis before vanishing back into the dark. Dorn's knuckles flexed once against the flight stick, feeling the slight tremor of thruster adjustments under his palm. Marek, how's the drift compensation holding? Marek's voice was steady, holding it optimal. The Avexis is responding better than simulations. We're within 3 meters of the Yukon patrol route envelope. If they had a live operator on those scans, we'd be caught already. Lorik didn't lift his eyes from the console. That's why they rely on automated systems. They trust their data because they trust their empire. That's their weakness. His words were low, like an oath given to the cold vacuum outside. Dorn's jaw shifted, the weight of his next command clear in the set of his shoulders. Deploy the relay decoy burst. I want a 10-second cascade, simulate their own relay pings in the outer corridor, scatter their pattern recognition. Lorik's fingers moved in quick, sharp taps, and outside the Avexis, the first relay drone released its decoy burst, a shimmering field of interference that blurred the Yalkin's passive scans. For a moment, the data feeds glowed brighter, then fell back to their cold blue calm as the Avexis drifted deeper into the corridor's shadow. Morek's eyes flickered to Dorn. That's our window. 10 seconds of blind sky. After that, they'll recalibrate. Dorn's voice was almost a whisper. That's all we need. Let's move. The Avexis' course shifted with a silent grace, the inertial compensators easing the shiver of acceleration across Dorn's chest. Outside the canopy, the Yukon transport corridor rose like a path laid in starlight, every line of data an invitation to infiltration. Lorik's voice cut across the moment, low and direct. Yukon Patrol Delta 14 just shifted course. They're drifting wide of the Lascari moon to adjust for tidal surge. They won't see us approach. Dorn's eyes locked on the child's location marker, one red dot in a field of data noise. His fingers brushed the data screen once, each motion deliberate. They think they're safe because no one has ever dared to challenge them in this corridor. They're about to learn that Earth doesn't issue threats. Earth issues consequences. The relay drones ahead of the Avexis moved like shadows, each one a blade against the black. In the cockpit, every man sat with a single focus, no breathing space for hesitation. Marek's hands rested on the flight controls like a surgeon's on his scalpel. Lorik's data feed flickered under his steady gaze, his shoulders locked in place. The recycled air was dry on the tongue, the cold of the cockpit seeping through the seams of their flight suits. Dorn's voice dropped to a near growl. Final alignment. Once we're locked, we dock without delay. No wasted movement. Merrick answered in a quiet monotone. Confirmed. We'll be in position in 30 seconds. After that, we match their thermal signature with the Avexis baffle system. They won't see the difference. The Avexis coasted forward, relay drones shifting with it in a dance of silent synchrony. Outside the cockpit glass, the Yukon patrol ships drifted in the distance, their hulls lit in faint blue light from the corridor's navigation beacons. Dorn's eyes tracked every movement, each shift in the alien fleet's formation, a note in the silent score he was orchestrating. As they moved into final position, Dorn spoke softly, his words measured and heavy. "We're not here to challenge them in open battle. We're here to take back what they thought was theirs. That's the only language they'll understand." In the dark of the cockpit, the mission's weight pressed down like a silent hammer, each man bound to its promise. The Avexis moved closer to the child's prison, and Earth's silent retribution moved with it. The Avexis slid forward with silent purpose, every meter closing the distance to the Yulkan shuttle drifting just ahead. Garrick Dorn's eyes tracked the magnetic clamps of the docking collar as they aligned with the shuttle's intake port, each mechanical lock snapping into place with a dull click that carried through the cabin floor. The ship shuddered lightly, the physical contact a brief, solid connection that grounded the plan in reality. Dorn adjusted the transponder controls, his gloved hands steady as he toggled the final authentication cycle. A calm voice issued from the control panel in the cold, clipped Yukon dialect, matching the false credentials Earth's infiltration protocols had layered over their approach. "Patrol Authority, border inspection clearance granted," the console stated, each word carrying the dry confidence of routine protocol. Lurik's voice came through the comm with steady calm. "Shuttle's onboard sensors are reading our transponder as legitimate. Their crew has acknowledged your boarding order." Dorn felt the faint crackle of static on the back of his tongue, tasted the filtered air that held the bitter trace of the recycled atmosphere, and drew in a measured breath. "Maintain signal drift at 0, I'm going in," he said, the words a quiet command that required no confirmation. He rose from his chair, boots shifting softly on the hard deck as he stepped through the narrow passageway leading to the boarding tube. His hand moved once along the control pad, adjusting the cloak module's output to match the shuttle's ambient fields. Each movement was deliberate, honed by years of drills and sharpened by the knowledge that a single misstep would end the mission in moments. The air in the boarding tube was cool, the lights above steady and white, casting long, sharp shadows that followed Dorn as he walked. At the end of the tunnel, the hatchway to the Yulkan shuttle yawned open, the interior lighting flickering with the faint pulse of life support systems. He stepped across the threshold without hesitation, boots clicking softly against the metal grid floor. The shuttle's entry bay was cramped and unadorned, a utilitarian space built for function, not comfort. 2 Yulkan crewmen turned at his arrival, their eyes calm and incurious behind the smooth glass of their breathing masks. Dorn kept his expression neutral, his posture calm. "Inspection Authority?" he said in the same clipped tone the Yulkan border officials used, the translator implant in his throat modulating the alien syllables with practiced ease. "Cargo verification. Your transponder flagged a minor data discrepancy." One of the Yulkwan gave a small nod, turning to his console with the mechanical obedience of those who had never been challenged. "Our logs are current. You'll find the cargo secure and compliant." His voice was dry, the cadence of one who did not see a threat, because his world had never taught him to look for one. Dorn's eyes swept the small space, noting every corner, every edge where a weapon or alarm might be hidden. There was nothing. Just the dull gleam of cargo clamps and the quiet confidence of a crew that believed in their ship's routine. He stepped past them without a word, moving deeper into the shuttle's corridor. His boots made soft contact with the deck plates, the sound of each step echoing in the narrow passage. The air smelled of recycled life support, cold and dry, each breath carrying the faint chemical tang of scrubbers that never quite removed the underlying trace of stale confinement. The corridor was lit in soft, cold light, the panels overhead flickering as the shuttle adjusted for minor course corrections. Dorn's shadow stretched ahead of him, a dark line that moved with quiet purpose along the walls. He reached the containment hold, the door sealed with a simple biometric lock that his infiltration codes bypassed in a single silent command. The lock disengaged with a muted hiss, the door sliding aside to reveal the small, sterile chamber beyond. The child lay in a containment pod at the center of the room, the clear panel of the pod's canopy showing a small face turned in restless sleep. Dorn paused for the briefest moment, letting the reality of that sight anchor him. The child's breath fogged the interior of the pod, small hands curled loosely against the padded lining. There was no sign of injury, No indication of harm, only the soft rise and fall of a chest that had never chosen this path. Dorn's eyes hardened. There was no room for sentiment here. Sentiment was what the Yelkan had tried to exploit. He stepped forward and keyed in the extraction protocol, the soft chime of the datapad's confirmation the only sound in the room. The pod's restraints released with a low mechanical click, and Dorn's hands moved to lift it from the cradle. The weight of it settled into his arms, the physical reality of the child's presence, a cold, hard truth that cut through any last hesitation. He turned, moving back through the corridor with the same measured calm, the child's pod held firmly against his chest. The Yulkan crewmen at the entry bay glanced up as he approached, their expressions unchanged, their trust in their routines unbroken. Dorn's voice was a calm echo in the quiet bay. Cargo discrepancy resolved. Continue your cycle. Neither Yulkan offered challenge or question. They turned back to their consoles, minds already shifting to the next task, in a life that had never known interruption. Dorn stepped through the boarding tube, the air inside the Avexis cold and clean against his skin. The hatch sealed shut behind him with a finality that felt like the last word in a conversation the Yulkan had never known they were part of. Merrick met him at the corridor junction, his eyes flicking to the pod and back. "No resistance?" he asked, voice low. "We saw only what they expected to see," Dorn replied. His hands did not tremble as he set the pod into the Avexis containment cradle, each movement deliberate and careful. "Secure the child. Begin drift maneuver to exit corridor. Lorik, prep data obfuscation protocols." Lorik's fingers were already moving, the data feeds shifting under his touch. "I'll overwrite the shuttle scan logs and inject false data signatures into the Yulkan relay net. When they look back, they'll see nothing but routine inspection data." Merrick's shoulders tightened, the quiet force of his reply matching the ship's cold resolve. "We're a shadow in their system. Let's keep it that way." Dorn's eyes settled on the child for a single moment more, the soft rise and fall of small breaths against the glass panel. Then he turned away, his focus already shifting to the next phase of the mission. The Avexis slipped from the Yulkan shuttle with the same deliberate calm it had carried in, the quiet power of Earth's refusal to yield echoing in the cold vacuum outside. The Avexis drifted in the corridor's shadow, each movement measured and hidden from the Yulkan's scanning horizon. Garrick Dorn stood at the data interface, his fingers moving across the cold, smooth console with a surgeon's exactness. Every command he entered adjusted the data virus payload in real time, its code threads weaving themselves through the Yulkan's core tracking systems like a silent infection. Lorik's voice cut through the sterile calm, his tone as tight as the mission's margins. "Payload active. Yulkan sensors are showing the shuttle as non-responsive. Their scan logs are still live, but we're feeding them false echoes. They'll see a drifting shuttle, nothing more." His fingers moved again, skin dry against the console's edge. "I'll loop their scan cycle to show damage signatures consistent with an inert power core. They'll think it's an accident." Merrick's voice was a low current beside him. "How long until their system rechecks the data integrity?" Dorn didn't hesitate. 7 minutes. We'll be gone by the time they realize there's nothing to find." His eyes locked on the child's containment pod, its seals holding steady, the soft hiss of the internal life support system the only sound in the compartment beyond the click of data keys. Outside the cockpit glass, the relay drones shimmered faintly in the reflected light of the Yulkan's patrol lanes. Each one held its position with unyielding focus, their white hulls carrying Earth's silent promise of consequence. Dorn felt the air in the Avexis dry and cool, each breath a crisp clarity that matched the hard edge of his commands. "Lorik," he said, voice low, "I want every data line feeding their tracking grid overridden. No static, no fluctuations. We're not giving them a crack to pry open." Lorik's lips tightened, the faint flush of exertion rising in his cheeks. "I'm pushing false telemetry. Their system's data reconciliation process is slow. We're inside their lag cycle." Merrick's hands moved across the flight controls with a calm that left no room for doubt. "Course drift holding at 0 deviation. Our signature is still buried in their patrol net's cold zone." His voice was calm, but the slight shift of his shoulders spoke of the weight in every small maneuver. Dorn shifted his attention back to the data sculpting interface. Each keystroke a deliberate slice through the Yokon's control net. The glow from the console lit his face in stark contrast, throwing the hard lines of his jaw into shadow. "Their core tracking node is the target," he said softly. "We'll feed them exactly what they expect, no more, no less." The child's small breaths fogged the inside of the pod's transparent panel, each exhale a soft rhythm against the cold clarity of the pod's interior. Dorn didn't let his gaze linger there. There was no time for sentiment, only the quiet certainty of action. Lorik's voice held a low tension as he spoke. "The data virus is stabilizing. If they try to backtrace the origin, they'll see only their own patrol node's failure. It'll bury the infection in their own confusion." His hands didn't stop, each movement shifting the false echoes into perfect alignment with the Yelkin's own patterns. Merrick glanced back over his shoulder, his voice steady but carrying a thread of steel. "We're ready to launch the child's containment pod on your order." Dorn gave a short nod. "Initiate countdown for launch. I want a clean vector, no radiation bloom, no heat spike. She leaves this corridor like a ghost." The air in the cockpit tasted of recycled metal and the faint tang of ionized power lines, each breath as sharp as the focus in their eyes. Dorn's command was a low growl. "Execute." Marek's fingers flicked the final launch sequence. The containment pod shifted in the cradle, the clamps unlocking with a muted click that echoed in the silent chamber. The pod drifted back, caught in the cradle's cold arms, then vanished into the launch track. In the external camera feed, the pod moved with quiet resolve, its dark profile blending with the corridor's shadows. The Yulkan patrol ships showed no sign of recognition, their data streams locked in the false signatures Lorik sculpted. Dorn's breath slowed, the cold air of the cockpit filling his lungs like a final confirmation. Lorik's voice dropped to a whisper. Yukon sensors just looped. They're reading shuttle debris and reactor failure. No life signs. They're logging it as an accident. His eyes flicked up, sharp with the cold triumph of the plan's success. They'll chase phantom damage while we're already gone. Merrick's hands steadied on the controls. Course correction complete. Drift path will carry us to the exit vector in 4 minutes. Yulkon's relay net hasn't seen a flicker. Dorn's nod was a single hard motion. Then, we're already done. They'll search for a ghost and find only the remains of their own illusions. He moved to the rear compartment, each step a silent echo against the deck plates. The child's pod was already prepped for atmospheric re-entry, its heat shielding locked and the life support cradle fully charged. Dorn knelt, adjusting the final seals, his voice quiet and hard. "Sleep easy, child. Earth's promise is more than words." Marek's voice in the comm was a low thread of focus. 3 minutes to exit corridor. All Yulkan relay nodes still reading static from our last injection. They're blind. Dorn's eyes never left the child's small, sleeping face. The soft breath that spoke of life stolen and reclaimed. He stood slowly, the finality of their infiltration locked in every muscle of his frame. Lorik's final report came with a quiet certainty. Data virus complete. Yokon's patrol net is compromised for 12 minutes. That's our window to exit and never return. The relay drones outside moved in silent unison, each one a flicker of Earth's cold refusal to be challenged. Dorn's final order was a whisper in the still air. "Bring us out." Merrick's hands moved in controlled precision, the Avexis shifting on its cold vector, the relay drones collapsing their interference field as they fell into step behind the infiltration ship. Outside the canopy, the Yokon's patrol ships drifted, unknowing, locked in a cycle of their own complacency. The child's pod was already moving on its launch track, Earth's quiet vengeance carried in its small form. Dorn's eyes were hard, but his voice was cold and even. When they find their corridor empty, they'll know this was not an accident. They'll know Earth left nothing to chance. And with that final declaration, the Avexis slipped back into the dark, its mission complete, and its silence unbroken. The wreckage it left behind was not one of metal and flame, but of certainty. Earth's unwavering message, delivered in every line of corrupted code and every false echo that now filled the Yokan's blind sky. The Avexis maintained a controlled drift as it cleared the shadow of the Leskari moon, sensors tracking the growing movement of the Yokon fleet, assembling in cold silence. Garrick Dorn's eyes never wavered from the data overlays that filled the cockpit's field of view. Each alien formation rendered in sharp lines of light that traced their slow, deliberate convergence. Merrick's voice carried the calm of a man who had seen the same formations in every simulation and drill. Yukon patrol formations aligning. 8 ships holding primary intercept vectors. Secondary formation rotating to enclose the corridor. His hand adjusted the flight vector minutely, the Avexis shifting its orientation with controlled precision. The air in the cockpit tasted dry and sterile, every breath a measured calm that matched the cold lighting around them. Lorik's fingers moved across the relay console, his voice steady. Their fleet's heat signatures are locked into a defensive ring. They're forming a hard line against any approach vector. They don't realize the corridor is already compromised. Dorn's response was as quiet as it was final. They're reacting to a pattern they can't see past. They'll tighten their formation, blind to the threat already inside their net. He shifted his focus to the child's containment pod, safely secured behind the cockpit's bulkhead. The soft hiss of the life support system filled the silence around them, the only sign of the small life Earth had reclaimed. Beyond the canopy, the Yukon ships drifted into rigid formations, their hulls throwing back the cold light of distant stars. The hard edges of their geometry marked an order they believed unchallenged, each patrol vector sweeping space with automated thoroughness. Merrick's voice cut through the measured quiet. We're inside their observation perimeter. They're not seeing us, they're seeing the echoes Lorik feeds them. Dorn nodded, his fingers moving across the cold interface to adjust the relay drone status. Hold relay drones in standby. They're armed, not active. Earth's Council wants final clearance before we turn this corridor into wreckage. His tone carried no doubt, only the clinical certainty of a man who had rehearsed each step long before the mission had begun. The Council's channel crackled to life, a crisp connection that brought the cold authority of Earth's command into the cockpit. Counselor Veyron's voice was low and even, the weight of final orders clear in every word. Commander Dorn, Earth's strategic directive confirms the status of this corridor. You are authorized to maintain relay drone dormancy until the Yukon initiates pursuit. We do not escalate until their fleet crosses the Leskari exclusion line. Merrick's hand stilled on the control stick, his gaze fixed on the forming alien lines. They'll reach that threshold in under 2 minutes. Their drive signatures are spiking. They're repositioning to cut off any retreat vector. His words carried no fear, only the cold calculation of inevitability. Dorn's reply was as measured as the moment demanded. Understood. We hold until they breach. Then we erase their response in totality. The words fell into the quiet like a hammer strike, the final confirmation that Earth's patience had ended. Lorik's voice was a low murmur, steady and sharp. Relay drones are locked on Yukon's signature emissions. Once triggered, the detonation will collapse their patrol grid in under 10 seconds. He adjusted the data overlays, the glow of the control interface reflecting in his focused eyes. They'll see a clean corridor. Then they'll see nothing at all. The cold air in the cockpit pressed against skin and breath, each man's focus locked on the unfolding pattern beyond the canopy. Dorn's gaze tracked the Yulkon's lead cruiser, the slow rotation of its hull panels casting long shadows against the black. They think they're staging a containment sweep. They've never faced a fleet that doesn't announce itself with flags or warnings. Merrick's hands shifted on the flight controls, knuckles whitening as he kept the Avexis locked into its shadow drift. Their lead ship's turning to close the upper corridor. They'll expect us to fall back. They don't realize we're not retreating. His voice was calm, the quiet steel of a man who understood that every breath now was part of the same final cadence. Dorn keyed the council's channel open once more, his words direct and clipped. "We have eyes on their full formation. They're 2 minutes from corridor breach. Earth's final clearance for drone release requested." The council's answer was immediate, the weight of the directive carrying the cold finality Earth had chosen. "Clearance granted. On your command, relay drones initiate full collapse of the Yukon patrol net. Earth will not leave this message unfinished." Merrick's shoulders shifted, a slow breath released into the dry air. "We're ready." Lorik's fingers tightened once on the console, the silent promise of Earth's quiet threat. Dorn's eyes swept the final data readout, the cold light of the overlays painting his face in stark relief. "On breach, initiate collapse. Maintain exit vector, no deviations." Beyond the cockpit, the Yukon fleet's geometry hardened, each ship slotting into place with the mechanical perfection of a species that had never needed to fear the cold darkness between stars. The Avexis watched them from the shadow, every sensor locked, every man silent in the knowledge that this corridor would be the last line they would ever hold. Merrick's voice cut across the final calm. "Their lead ship is crossing the exclusion line. They're committed. There's no step back." Dorn's reply was a single word, spoken without hesitation. "Execute." Lorik's hand moved with the finality of a blade's edge. The relay drone commands left the console in a single silent wave, each drone shifting from passive drift to active collapse in the same cold heartbeat. Outside the canopy, the first drone's detonation was a silent flash of light against the black, the chain reaction racing down the corridor in a rhythm of destruction. Merrick's voice was steady as the final commands echoed in the cockpit. "Relay collapse initiated. Yulkan data net disintegrating. Their command vectors are breaking in real time." The calm in his tone was the calm of Earth's cold resolve, each word a stone laid in the ruin of alien confidence. Dorn's gaze locked on the final data feed as the Yulkan ships twisted in sudden confusion, their formation dissolving in the wake of Earth's silent strike. "They'll understand this was never about open war," he said quietly, the cold of the cockpit air matching the finality in his voice. "This was about the line they crossed when they took a child from Earth." And with that, the Avexis turned on its exit vector, Earth's message delivered in the quiet geometry of destroyed relay nodes and drifting alien hulls. The promise of Earth's patience ended, and its silence unbroken. The first relay drone's detonation was a sharp flash that cut across the black corridor, white light tearing at the edges of the Yukon patrol's formation. Garrick Dorn watched from the cockpit of the Avexis, each explosion unfolding in measured sequence across the data overlay. The cold air of the ship pressed against his skin, every breath carrying the faint scent of recycled filters and quiet finality. Marek's voice was level, his tone stripped of anything but the fact of what was happening. "Detonation chain complete. Relay drones have triggered total grid collapse. Their entire data net is disintegrating." His eyes didn't shift from the control panel, fingers moving to maintain the Avexis stable drift. Lorik adjusted the data feeds in silence, his focus locked on the final shudder of the Yulkan fleet's formations breaking apart. The external cameras fed the cockpit screens with the stark geometry of ruin. Yukon ships twisting in the grip of orbital shear, hull plating tearing free in jagged lines. The relay drones burned themselves out in bright flashes, each one a blade of light that cut away another link in the alien command structure. The quiet in the cockpit was complete. Every man's focus locked in the moment where Earth's tactics were no longer a shadow, but a final, undeniable stroke. Dorn's voice carried no triumph, only the certainty of the plan's final phase. "Launch the child's containment pod. We clear this sector while they scramble to understand their own defeat." Merrick's hand shifted, the pod's launch vector aligning in the data feed. "Pod launch vector clear. No obstructions." He keyed the final command and the pod drifted away from the Avexis, its small silhouette a quiet defiance in the collapsing chaos. Outside, the Yukon ship struggled to realign, each vessel pivoting with controlled desperation as they realized their corridor was no longer theirs. The lead cruiser's hull split along its central axis, a shudder that ran the length of the frame before it twisted away, momentum carrying it clear of the debris it had once called its domain. Lorik's voice came low and direct. Yukon command links severed. They can't coordinate. Their fleet's responding with local commands only. No. Dorn's fingers traced the edge of the console, eyes steady. Then they're no longer a fleet. They're scattered hulls in a corridor they can't control. The words settled in the air, each one carrying the finality that had driven Earth's plan from the start. The external sensors caught the last of the relay drone detonations, the bright flashes receding into drifting wreckage. The cold silence that followed was the final confirmation. No alarms, no pursuit, only the broken geometry of alien vessels drifting with the debris. Merrick's jaw tightened as he watched the data feeds collapse to static. That's it. Their corridor's gone. No recovery. The cockpit smelled of cold steel and the faint tang of sweat, each man locked in the rhythm of Earth's control. Dorn's gaze shifted to the small indicator showing the child's pod clear of the combat zone, its vector steady toward Earth's rendezvous coordinates. "Status on the pod?" he asked, voice low. "Pod's trajectory locked," Marek said, fingers adjusting the vector to ensure no debris path would threaten the small shape gliding home. "It's out of the zone. They'll never see it in the wreckage." His tone carried the quiet finality of a man who understood that some lines, once crossed, were never offered a second chance. Lorik's hands moved across the console, final data scrubbing cycles replacing the relay collapse with blank silence. "We're invisible to them now. Their patrol net is a field of static and broken echoes, Earth's message delivered in every shattered line of code." His words were quiet, the weight of them cutting across the cold air. The Avexis drifted back along its exit vector, every movement a study in unhurried departure. Outside the hull, the drifting shards of Yukon vessels caught the last of the distant starlight, fractured shapes that no longer held command or unity. Dorn didn't speak as he watched the final readouts fade, each breath tasting of the mission's end. Mareka glanced over his shoulder, voice steady. "We're clear. No pursuit vectors. They're too busy trying to find where their own fleet has gone." His tone held no satisfaction, only the cold recognition that the work was done, the corridor erased as surely as if Earth's ships had scoured it with open war. Dorn let the silence settle before he spoke, each word carrying the weight of Earth's refusal to be prey. "We don't linger. Set course for extraction vector. We leave them with the silence they earned." Merrick's hand shifted on the control stick, the Avaxis turning away from the drifting ruin without ceremony or pause. Lorik's final report was a quiet confirmation. "Child's pod has cleared the debris zone. Earth's retrieval craft is en route to secure." The faint green glow of the data feed was the only color in the cold cockpit. A single point of calm in the unbroken black. The Avexis moved in silence, the last pieces of the Yulkan fleet's structure drifting like broken promises behind it. No signals reached for them, no commands tried to reclaim what was already lost. Earth's final message lay in the quiet wreckage, and the cold certainty that this corridor would never see alien dominance again. Dorn's eyes held the child's pod vector in a final glance, the small life that had been the catalyst for Earth's cold fury. "They took a child," he said quietly, his voice steady as the ship's silent vector. "We answered, in wreckage. Let them learn." And with that last word, the Avexis turned for home. Earth's final reply left in the dark silence behind them. The Avexis glided into the docking bay of Earth's orbital platform, its matte black hull unmarred, betraying nothing of the mission it had just completed. The docking clamps engaged with a muted clank, and the ship settled into place. Inside, Commander Garrick Dorn stood motionless, eyes fixed on the containment pod housing the rescued child. The pod's status lights pulsed steadily, indicating stable life signs. Merrick approached, his boots echoing softly against the deck. "Pod integrity confirmed. Life support systems are functioning optimally," he reported, his voice devoid of emotion. Dorn nodded once, his gaze unwavering. "Initiate transfer to medical bay. Ensure the child receives immediate care." As the crew executed the command, Dorn turned and exited the FXs, his footsteps measured, each one resonating with the weight of the operation's conclusion. The corridor leading to the command center was illuminated by cold white lights, casting elongated shadows that danced along the walls. Inside the command center, Earth's Strategic Directive Council convened, their faces illuminated by the glow of data displays. Counselor Veyron addressed Dorn without preamble. "Commander, the operation's final phase requires your authorization." Dorn approached the central console, his fingers deftly inputting the necessary commands. A secure transmission was prepared, containing footage of the child's safe return and the obliterated remnants of the Yelkan fleet. No words accompanied the visuals. The images conveyed Earth's message unequivocally. "Transmission ready," a technician confirmed. "Dispatch," Dorn ordered. The data packet traversed the expanse of space, reaching the Yolkan High Council. In their grand chamber, the alien leaders watched in silence as the footage played. The child, unharmed, was shown receiving medical attention, while the wreckage of their fleet drifted aimlessly in the void. No threats were issued, no ultimatums delivered. The silence was deafening. Back on Earth's orbital platform, Dorn stood before a viewport, observing the stars. Marek joined him, the two men sharing a moment of quiet reflection. "Do you believe they understand now?" Marek inquired. Dorn's response was measured. "They've witnessed the consequences of their actions. Whether they comprehend the gravity is their burden." In the medical bay, the child rested peacefully, monitored by attentive staff. The soft beeping of equipment underscored the room's tranquility. A nurse adjusted the child's blanket, ensuring comfort. The operation was classified under the code name Controlled Dominance. No further commentary was provided. The designation encapsulated the mission's essence: decisive action executed with calculated restraint. As Earth resumed its routines, the message had been sent and received. The galaxy had been reminded of humanity's resolve. No further elaboration was necessary. What did you think of Earth's final message to the Yolkan? Comment below with your thoughts and theories about the silent power of strategic dominance. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more intense HFY stories. Let us know which scenario you'd like to see Earth tackle next.